Welcome to our webinar. Chargebacks, what is it and how to prevent it? Chargebacks can be frustrating and can cause a setback to merchants as it comes with high costs, fees, and is time-consuming. Understanding how chargebacks work is crucial to mitigating cardholder disputes from occurring. So, what is a chargeback? A chargeback is the reversal of a credit card payment that is requested by the cardholder and executed by the relevant issuing bank. It serves as a form of consumer protection from fraudulent activity made unknowingly using their credit card or account. Often chargebacks are ruled in favor of cardholders, whether or not merchants are at fault or are victims of fraud. To tackle chargeback situations best, merchants should first understand how the chargeback process works. Chargebacks arise when a cardholder contacts their issuing bank to file a dispute on an incorrect charge. The issuing bank assesses the claim and determines its legitimacy before passing it on to the merchant's acquiring bank. The acquiring bank informs the merchant of the chargeback, and the merchant decides whether they accept or dispute the chargeback. When accepting chargebacks, merchants lose the cost of the chargeback, as well as any fees involved. If the merchant chooses to dispute the chargeback, they must submit forms and documents to the acquiring bank. The acquiring bank deducts funds from the merchant's account to compensate the cardholder and cover the fees for the investigation. Merchants are given roughly 7 to 10 days to respond. The acquiring bank will pass the merchant's returned forms and evidence back to the cardholder's issuing bank. The acquiring bank also posts temporary funds to the merchant's account. The issuing bank evaluates the evidence submitted and determines whether the transaction was fulfilled by the merchant. While there are 2 temporary credits being held, once the chargeback dispute is resolved, one credit will become permanent, while the other reverts to debit. If either parties are unsatisfied with the outcome of the initial chargeback round, they may file for a second round of chargeback dispute, provided that further evidence and supporting documents are available. The final round in a chargeback dispute can also be called an arbitration. In arbitration, it involves the addition of the card brand intervening to resolve the dispute between the acquiring and issuing banks. At this point, the acquiring bank and merchant decide whether or not they enter this round. Often the acquiring bank and merchant tend to avoid this round as it comes with high fees, effort, and is time-consuming. It may cost merchants between $500 to $900, and the process may take between 10 to 45 days. Merchants may also avoid arbitration if the transaction amount is below a particular amount. For example, merchants will not fight another round if their product or service was only worth $100, but may find it worthwhile to dispute a chargeback for a product or service worth thousands of dollars. Once the merchant and acquiring bank decide to enter arbitration, the card brand also enters arbitration. The card brand reviews the evidence submitted by the issuing and acquiring banks and makes a final decision. The losing bank must pay the arbitration fees, and the dispute is closed. Merchants are often faced with chargebacks on a monthly, weekly, and even daily basis. Fortunately, there are some tips and ways merchants can consider to reduce chargebacks. Firstly, merchants must recognize the causes of chargeback. Merchant and service error are both areas the merchant can take control of more easily. Merchant error is largely a result of faulty business practices, unchecked policies, processing errors, or accounting errors. Service error is likely due to poor return policy procedures or poor representation of product or services that were not completely delivered to the customer's satisfaction. What can merchants do to reduce chargeback risks? While payment service providers can offer risk management for online businesses, it is not a bad idea for merchants to consider or apply some of the following tips. To begin with, merchants should implement fraud filters such as AVS or CVV checks. Use clear payment descriptors because often disputes or chargebacks arise from confusing payment descriptors or cardholders not recognizing the charge. In other words, the transaction description should be recognizable to the merchant's business name. For example, An online store name as Greg's Shoes should not have a payment descriptor as Bonnie's Company. Employ risk management by using payment service providers and their security or fraud prevention services. Firstly, for businesses that deliver physical goods, it is important to utilize shipment tracking, as it may be helpful during a dispute process. It is also worth comparing the billing and shipping addresses, especially if they differ greatly by country or state. Merchants should ease the refund process and actually offer refunds. This is the best way to reduce chargebacks, as it keeps customer disputes and issues internal and are resolved almost immediately. Finally, to offer exceptional customer service. When given the opportunity to resolve chargeback issues, merchants should take initiative and get in touch with customer and try to address chargeback promptly via good customer service. Here are some general tips to merchants. Merchants should be accessible. This means that they should be available to their customers. Some customers may want to reach out to merchants before filing a chargeback. Therefore, merchants should provide contact details such as an email address or phone number. Deliver a detailed and specific description of the good or service to ensure that it is described as accurate as possible. This may reduce chargebacks that are a result of the good or service not matching the description. Be alert and recognize the signs of fraud in order to act early and mitigate chances of chargeback. Merchants should train staff to know how to manage online payment transactions, as well as recognize signs of fraud. Records and documentation should be kept in case the need to dispute a chargeback arises. And finally, merchants should communicate clearly to customers. Often some chargebacks are due to customers not being informed of the status of their order. Accra is a service provider offering affordable payment gateway service. We can approve your merchant account in less than 24 hours. Contact us if you are interested in knowing more.